everybody. Welcome back to The Plant Path. I'm your host, Seja Popham, founder of the School of Evolutionary Herbalism and Natura Sophia Spagyrics. And this is a second part here that I'm doing in the Allergy Strategy. If you have not had a chance to watch or listen to part one of this, I really encourage you to do so. This part might make a little bit more sense if you have a little bit of a better understanding of some of the foundational aspects that I discuss in part one. There'll be some links somewhere below for you to check that out. So be sure to do so. Watch that one, come back. If you've already watched that, great, keep listening, because in this one, I'm going to be sharing with you the two primary strategies that I think are important to consider when you're thinking about working with someone that struggles with seasonal allergies. But really, a lot of this approach is supportive for other types of allergies as well. And we're basically looking at this from a perspective of a preventative strategy, as well as from an acute strategy, as in, I've got hay fever now, what do I do so I don't have to take a Claritin? So let's dig into this. So the preventative approach, I think, is the most important approach. And this is one of those areas where the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, really is very fitting, because it's generally a lot easier to prevent seasonal allergies than it is to treat them. Once you get a really strong hay fever reaction, it's possible to treat it for sure with herbs. There's a couple supplements that can be really helpful as well, but you generally have to take a lot of herbs pretty frequently to get it under control. And some people just don't have the bandwidth or the patience to do that. They just want their itchy, watery eyes and sneezes and postnasal drip to go away right now, and it's just easier to take a Claritin. So when it comes to the therapeutic approach, which we'll talk about in a little bit, there's definitely some considerations that are important, but because you generally have to take a lot of stuff frequently to get it under control, the preventative approach is so much better, because then you just don't experience the hay fever, right? So not to mention, a lot of the approaches that I'm going to discuss with you here aren't necessarily all focused strictly on allergies. A lot of the approach here is just getting your inflammation down, like observing your life and seeing what is it in your life that is contributing to an inflammatory response, an immunological reaction, and how can we cut those out, get those stable and under control and down, so that when spring or summer rolls around and you want to go tiptoe through the tulips, as they say, you won't start itching and sneezing and all of that. So I think a lot of the guidelines that I'm going to share with you here, honestly, are just pretty good guidelines to feel better all around, because they get inflammatory processes under control, which is really at a big contributing factor here to allergies, as I discussed in a lot more detail in part one. Once again, if you have not watched or listened to that, go check that out before continuing, because it'll put a lot of what I'm about to say in bigger context. And it will also just help your immune system be stronger to some of the things I'm talking about. So here I'm going to lay out some approaches, some strategies here for a preventative approach right now. So number one, eliminate as many immunological triggers as possible from your life. This is basically taking a step back and really looking at your life and looking at the things that you do, the things that you eat. I got a big goober on my glasses here. I'm going to wipe that off really quick. Looking at your life and seeing, doing a really good deep dive assessment into what are possible triggers for inflammation and therefore an immunological response and trigger in your life. So what are those things? So I would say number one here would be to do a very deep analysis of your diet and screen for any potential food allergens or food intolerances. If you were like, Seja, what's the difference between a food allergy versus a food intolerance? Go watch part 1 where I describe that in more detail. But you need to really assess this. There's a number of ways people do this. Some people do a 3-day diet diary where pretty much anytime you put anything into your mouth, you write it down. Oftentimes a really good way, and that way you can just kind of get a good sense of what it is that you're eating. I mean, obviously you're eating it. You should have an awareness of what you eat. That's usually a good thing. But the big ones here are the main triggers that a lot of people experience, either in the form of allergy or intolerance, would be gluten, dairy, sometimes corn, soy, eggs. Those are some of the big ones. Certainly some people have, allergies to things like eggplant or shellfish, nuts. And actually nuts and seeds can be a big one. I've had some people where, we eliminated the big ones and they were still having issues. And then it was like, oh, we pulled out sunflower seeds because they would like sunflower butter because almond butter was expensive and sunflower butter was cheaper. And so that was what they ate. And then it was like, well, let's try cutting out the sunflower. And then sure enough, boom, a lot of in this case, it was a atopic dermatitis, eczema type pattern. It was the sunflower oil. So the seed oils, nuts, seeds can be contributing factors, but you just really need to screen the diet. And generally a good approach to this would be to just engage in an elimination diet. Let's do a 6 to 8 week elimination of all the major foods that tend to provoke immunological reactions, which, on a side note, I think it's interesting, a lot of the foods that tend to do this are the ones that humans have tinkered with the most, right? Like whether through selective breeding or genetic modification or pumping them full of hormones and antibiotics in the case of a lot of dairy. Right? There's just like the foods that human beings have messed with the most tend to be the ones that give us problems on an inflammatory, immunological, gut health kind of level. So do that. Screen for food intolerance. Generally, you want to reintroduce one food at a time. Note your signs and symptoms. A good way, something I learned from Paul Bergner, is the food intolerance triangle. So oftentimes you can tell someone has a food intolerance if they have any form of digestive symptom, some sort of musculoskeletal symptom, joint pain, muscle pain. Headaches can be in that category. And then if there's some sort of mood, energy, cognitive function, so fatigue, just low energy, irritable, frustrated, moody, kind of overly emotional, and then anxiety, depression, these can be, or just brain fog, difficult concentration, things like that. If you or someone has that triad in any way, shape, or form, even it's like, oh yeah, I'm kind of stiff and sore all over, kind of vague, my body doesn't feel great, and yeah, I get some headaches every now and then, and I have gas, and I feel groggy a lot or tired a lot. It's like they might have a minor food intolerance. So sometimes that pattern can be mild, but the pattern is still there. So food allergens is big. Pet dander triggers, like, okay, this is always a sensitive subject for people because, well, for some people, their animals are basically, replacements for children. So they really baby their animals, and, the animals sleep in their bed and, go everywhere with them. And if you have a problem with pet dander, animal dander, and from an allergic perspective, that can be pretty severe. So, have your animals be outside maybe a little more often. Try to have the animal. It's like there's a way to navigate it. Like maybe don't let the animals up on the furniture. The big one is when people sleep with the animal in bed. If you have a problem with animal dander, And even if you don't know you do, it might be a contributing factor. So sometimes that's something to consider. And just keep the house clean, like keep the animal hair down in the household. Keep everything clean. Try to avoid too much contact with pet hair is a big one. And then kind of back to the food thing, I would say high inflammation triggering foods. So heavily processed foods just in general aren't really that healthy for us and can be pretty pro-inflammatory. Sugar can be that way. Foods really rich in omega-6 fatty acids, and especially the oils, the deep fried foods, the heavily processed oils, hydrogenated oils. These are really big triggers because they disrupt the omega-6, omega-3 fatty acid balance, leaning you more towards a pro-inflammatory pathway in the body. So fats and oils, give yourself an oil change, right? Just do things like olive oil, animal oils, whether that be, duck fat or, we're farmers. We're country bumpkins over here, as my friends like to make fun of me. We do a lot of animal fats, right? We render all of our own fat from our sheep. It's all grass fed. That is full of good omega-3 fatty acids. I'm not really in the camp of that lard is really horrible and bad for you, because it's a natural fat. So grass fed, butter, ghee, olive oil, these are the kinds of oils that I think are really good. If we can limit the amounts of synthetic oils, seed oils, anything that you basically can't squeeze and see that it's oily, right, probably shouldn't be consumed. Any oil that you couldn't just press oil out of it or render it out easily without a bunch of chemicals are things that I think are okay for us to consume from an immunological inflammatory perspective. So try to reduce the level of inflammatory triggers. I also think, there is a certain element of cleanliness in the home that is associated with this. We're a big fan of like keeping a super clean refrigerator. I think every time you're loading your fridge up full of food, or as soon as it gets low, like clean your fridge. I think fridge cleaning should be on everyone's routine because, it can get damp in there. It can get a little gross in the refrigerator. That's where your food is. So let's keep the fridges clean. So anyways, so eliminate as many immunological triggers. Decrease inflammatory load. Okay, so this is kind of on the same vein, but this would be more what types of things you can, the first part was kind of what to eliminate. Here's what you can do to try to get your inflammation under control. So one would be omega-3 fatty acids. I'm a huge fan of omega fatty acids. Personally, I think fish oil is the best form of omega fatty acids. If you're a vegan or a vegetarian and super opposed to fish oils, I encourage you to get over that and use fish oil because it's just better. And the algal oils, you can do the algae oils. They're, as far as my understanding, they're quite expensive, and I'm not sure how much better they are, or if they're better or worse. I would toss out your ideas around flax oil, borage oil. Those are just not. They don't cut it. Hemp seed oil. That's not an effective method. Fish oil is the way to go. Sorry if I offend anyone with that, but I'm not really. So omega-3 fatty acids are super important. I generally recommend people get at least 1,000 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acid a day. Note that's 1,000 milligrams, at least 1,000 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids a day. That's not 1,000 milligrams of fish oil. There's a difference. So you want to make sure you're getting at least 1,000 of omega-3s. I personally prefer to make sure, I take fish oil every day, and I'm getting at least 1,000 milligrams of EPA every day. I take a pretty strong concentrate, and I take a lot of them. I think they're good in that way. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is just all around a good nutrient. To make sure that your levels are optimal. A lot of people are very deficient in vitamin D. The standards normal limits on blood work. Oftentimes, they're raising them, but they're oftentimes way lower than they should be. So I think an optimal level of vitamin D is at least above 50 on blood work. Optimally around 70, 75 is good, I think. That's where I really like to be. But vitamin D, helpful on multiple levels. Third piece here would be to increase your antioxidant status. So this would be increase your dark leafy vegetables at least one meal a day. You should have a big pile of dark leafy greens, right? So that's your kale, your chard, broccoli, whatever, your dark green vegetables. Ideally, I think you should have a pile of greens in every meal. That's nice, but if you can at least get it once a day, that's good. And then ample amounts of berries. So berries, the darker, the better. Obviously, there's seasonal availability to berries. That's a factor to consider. We grow a lot of berries, raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, and we end up freezing a whole bunch because we just grow more than we can eat logistically. So we freeze a bunch and have them year round that way. So there's the food side of berries, like I just mentioned. I think currants are really, really good. I think those dark black currants are amazing. They're tart, but boy, they're really good. I think the stronger ones like the blueberries are fantastic. The dark currants. I also really like goji here. I like golden berries, very good. Now, from an herbal standpoint, there's berries that are very rich in antioxidants that are also medicinal in nature. So amla is very good. Hawthorn, schizandra berry. What's cool about schizandra is that it's also an immunoregulating herb. It's kind of immunoamphoteric and adaptogenic. Rose hips are also fantastic here. So increase your antioxidant status. So that's all decrease inflammatory load. 3 is going to be stabilize your immune system. So the way this is typically done is through 2 categories of herbs. You have your or mainly you want to use what would be considered immunoregulating herbs. What these herbs tend to do is, just as they say, they regulate the immune system. So they oftentimes will help kind of tamp down immunological excess, kind of cool and calm down a hypersensitive immune system. And many herbs in this category help to stabilize mast cells. So when you stabilize those mast cells, you're gonna help to decrease their degranulation and therefore decrease the histamine response. That is gonna help with allergies. So good examples of herbs here. I'm not going to detail out all the herbs. These are just herbs for you to have all on a list and go look into. So turmeric is fantastic here. I really like gotu kola. The red root sage. This is the danshen in traditional Chinese medicine. The Baikal skullcap. So that's Scutellaria baikalensis. Don't think Western skullcap will do this. This is a different skullcap. Amla also is in this category, also nicely very antioxidant. And actually cinnamon is nicely immunoregulating too. Medicinal mushrooms are also critical here. These are immune amphoteric. So oftentimes if there's, what we see, and especially with autoimmune patterns, is oftentimes there's aspects of the immune system that are excessive, other aspects that are deficient, or it's cycling. You go through a pattern of immune excess and then your immunity kind of burns out and then you have a period of immune deficiency. The immune amphoterics are really, really good here. And all of those medicinal mushrooms are excellent here. Some of my personal favorites would be cordyceps, reishi, maitake, shiitake, a lot of the polypores are really good, being like things like chaga, birch polypore, things like that. So stabilizing the immune system. And then stress management is huge. Optimize sleep and rest with lifestyle and nervines. So as I mentioned in part 1, if you're stressed out all the time, you're gonna be more prone to having inflammation issues because of cortisol secretions and adrenal health and your whole HPA axis attribute of your neuroendocrine system. So just making sure that you're getting good sleep, you wake up feeling well rested, you're getting rejuvenative sleep, managing stress during the daytime with nervine herbs to help just kind of keep you calm and even keel, a little more relaxed is good. Sometimes people that maybe have been undergoing long-standing stress and maybe have a degree of HPA axis dysregulation could benefit potentially from some adaptogens. Now, what's interesting here is there's some overlap with regulating your immune system and adaptogens and managing stress in that some adaptogens are also really great immune amphoterics. So these are really good remedies to consider if there's chronic stress, HPA dysregulation, and a need for some immunoregulation, balancing to the immune system. And remember, as I said, as stress goes up, immunity goes down. So stress and immunity are very much so hand in hand, and inflammation is intricately tied into that. So some of my favorite remedies here would be ashwagandha, probably my favorite just because that's the one I personally use the most. Asian ginseng is very good, Panax ginseng, tulsi, holy basil, osmum sanctum. Cordyceps, really good here as well. Shilajit, which is the mineral pitch, from Ayurveda, the mineral pitch. And licorice, Glycyrrhiza glabra. Yeah, is licorice adaptogenic? Some people say yes, some say no. Some say probable or possible, but nonetheless, very, very good immune amphoteric. And the last piece for the preventative approach would be gut restoration. So gut permeability, as I mentioned in part 1, is very closely tied to immune issues. So I definitely think in conjunction with an elimination diet, reducing inflammation, doing some gut restoration can be very helpful here as a prevention for allergies, believe it or not. Even the hay fever allergies, this can be helpful. So doing gastrointestinal repairing type remedies or vulnerary, a lot of these are vulnerary herbs that will help heal the gut lining, the intestinal epithelial membrane function, getting it optimized. Very, very good. My favorites here would be things like yarrow, plantain, calendula, marshmallow root, licorice root. Meadowsweet is very good here. That would be Filipendula. Ulmaria, meadowsweet, very good. Turmeric is very nice there too, as a gut repairing herb as well. So these are the things that I suggest for a preventative approach. Now that's a lot. You could potentially pick a couple of those things to try. Obviously, if you want to go all in, do all of them. But the trick is you got to start ahead of time, right? So if you get your allergies in May and June, you should probably start on a protocol like this, like after the holidays, right? Like you give it at least 3 months, 4 months to allow your body to stabilize. Like you can't do this kind of stuff for a week and expect your allergies, your hay fever to just magically disappear and never show up again. It's not going to work that way. These kinds of things that I mentioned here take time. It takes time for your inflammatory load to decrease. It takes time for your epithelial membrane in your gut to heal. It takes time for your immune system to get a little bit more stable. We all know it takes time to manage your stress and get your sleep on track. But these are all, like, all the stuff I shared here is not, breaking news in terms of just good general tips to feel healthier. So anyways, those are some of the things that I would suggest. I would say the key with the preventative approach, though, is you got to start ahead of time. Okay, so let's go into the acute approach. So generally, if we're talking about seasonal allergies or allergic rhinitis, which would be AKA hay fever, these are typically upper respiratory tract symptoms. So we see common symptoms with hay fever would be, again, sneezing, itchy red eyes, an itchy nose, sinus congestion. There can be this weird combo of sinus congestion, but also leakiness. So there can be the really runny nose. There can be sore throat from postnasal drip. So there's sinus congestion, but also leakiness happening at the same time of like a very thin, watery mucus coming from the upper respiratory tract. So from an energetic perspective, we often consider that a really great example of the damp relaxation tissue state. It's damp, well, because you see all this dampness, right? Your nose is dripping either out or in the back of your throat. Your eyes are watering. There's just dampness clearly that you can see, but it's relaxed. Like the mucosal membranes have become overly lax, and they're causing this hypersecretion of very thin, watery mucus that's leaking out of the body. So we would call it a damp relaxation or lax tissue state. And this is actually partially due to histamine, right? Histamine causes a degree of vasodilation. So it's opening and dilating everything up. It's relaxing everything. Hence, we can see that leakiness. While at the same time, there can tend to be bronchoconstriction that we're usually going to see more with asthmatic type allergies. And at the same time, we also see increased bronchosecretion. So we're seeing excess mucus secreted by the bronchioles, as well as constriction of the bronchioles. So you end up with this damp tension asthma. And this is where really great herbs in those instances are things like lobelia, skunk cabbage, that are pungent, warming, aromatic, at least in the case of skunk cabbage, but bronchorelaxants. So in this case, though, the mucosa is leaky, and that's the key thing that we have to understand, is that it's that leaky mucosa that is some of the main reasons we have such uncomfortable symptoms with hay fever, is because of that leakiness. Now, obviously, there's a lot of inflammation, irritation, but it's that damp relaxation tissue state that is very uncomfortable. Traditional Chinese medicine, we might consider this a wind damp pattern. So damp for reasons I explained. The wind there, well, you're going to see wind with bronchoconstriction. Wind tends to create tension or constriction of tissues, but it also is like the itchiness. If you've ever had, you get the itchy eyes, the itchy tingly feeling in your nose and in the back of your throat. Those tend to be associated with wind. It's also coming from the outside, right? So allergies like this kind of tend to come and go depending on where you are, but it's the outside reaching the inside. So in a way, it could be seen as kind of an external influence that's causing this, obviously. So that's just a little bit of background on hay fever. And let's go through some of our main categories of herbs that we want to consider. So I'm just going to share herb categories and real quickly list out some of the remedies that you might consider. Of course, all of this will be in the full blog post. So if you want to revisit this or want to take some time to jot them down, be sure to visit the whole full blog post over on our website at evolutionaryherbalism.com/plant path, I think is what the URL is. There'll be a link in the show notes for you to access the full post where we'll have all these herb listings there. But okay, so the first therapeutic strategy that we want to do for these types of symptoms is first astringe and dry the mucosa and drain dampness. Okay, so we want to drain that dampness and we want to tighten and tonify that mucosal membrane. We want to astringe the laxity, is the way I like to think of it. What that does is it A, dries up the fluids, B, it tightens up that mucosal membrane so it's not as able to just profusely leak thin watery discharge. And of course, we want to select herbs that are not just astringent and drying to the mucosa or draining of dampness, but we want to select those that are going to have a specific affinity for the upper respiratory tract. Now, I'll note that that's a relatively small select few herbs. There's lots of herbs that affect more lower respiratory tract, right? Throat, lungs, bronchioles, but sinuses and all up in here, not quite as many. Here's some of my favorites. We have bayberry, golden seal. This is one area where I think golden seal is really nice as everybody thinks as a herbal antibiotic, mucous membrane tonic. Okay, that's the way to think of golden seal. Yerba mansa, that would be Anemopsis californica. Collinsonia, also known as stone root, that would be Collinsonia canadensis. Sage, just your garden variety sage, Salvia officinalis. Eyebright, Euphrasia officinalis. Now everybody thinks eyebright's for the eyes. Eyebright's really for the sinuses. It's not really so much an eye herb as it is a upper respiratory herb. But for eyebright, you really have to use the fresh extract of it, a fresh tincture. And it's really hard to come by these days. Eyebright is becoming a difficult herb to acquire in the realm of herbal commerce. So good luck acquiring eyebright, but if you can, try to find a fresh extract. And then red root or ceanothus, many different species of ceanothus that are pretty good. Americanus is the standard, but we've used a couple different varieties. And they all seem to be, at least the ones I've used, seem to be pretty interchangeable. Ceanothus velutinus, cuneatus, they all seem to be pretty similar to the Americanus. So these are all astringent herbs that will operate on the upper respiratory system. Really good ones there. Most are astringent, drying, and will aid in that excess mucus secretion. Second therapeutic strategy here would be to clear dampness and stimulate stagnation. So obviously the astringents will dry some of that dampness, but there's some other categories of herbs that can actually help drain dampness and stimulate the stagnation, the kind of puffy, swollen stuff that can happen, get a little puffy and swollen and inflamed up there. And so stimulating that stagnation can be helpful. There's a couple herbs that interestingly are diuretics that are commonly used for upper respiratory tract allergies. And the two big ones here would be nettle leaf and goldenrod. Nettle leaf and goldenrod, one of their main properties is as diuretics. But they actually, when taken in adequate amounts, can prove to be helpful for upper respiratory allergies. I also really like our pungent stimulants to help move the stagnation and just clear all the mucus out of there. So these are going to be your hot, spicy, pungent herbs, things like a lot of them with a respiratory affinity. So gumweed or grindelia is very nice. Horseradish, great remedy to clear the sinuses. Even wasabi can work really, really well there too. If you're in a pinch, you're out and maybe, there's a grocery store that has some wasabi or a little horseradish, like buy some. It can be really helpful to clear the upper respiratory tract. Cayenne pepper is good here. Osha, thyme, oregano, a lot of those aromatic mints that you find in your spice cabinet can be very nice, but I think thyme and oregano are especially useful. Rosemary, to an extent, can be good. The spikenard, the Aurelia can be helpful here. I've used yerba santa quite a bit in this way. It used to grow all over our property in Southern Oregon, so I got to know yerba santa quite a bit. That's Eriodictyon californicum. And even simple black pepper these are all pungents to move up and disperse that stagnation, warm and dry and disperse. Very good property there. The other thing that's worth considering is steam. Like steam in and of itself is warm and will help disperse stagnation. This can be done with teas. So if you're just drinking herbal teas, you breathe in the teas, sniff your tea. This can also be full-blown teas or steams. You like doing the tent with the hot water steaming up. You could put a couple drops of essential oil in there. Saunas, or even just being in a hot shower and letting it get super steamy in there can be helpful. But as far as drinking teas here, I really like chamomile and yarrow, bee balm or monarda, thyme, sage, and oregano. These are all herbs that can be very useful as a steam, but you can also drink them as well. They can help clear stagnation. Eucalyptus essential oil also is very nice here. Hey, real quick, I want to take a short pause here in the class on part 2 of the allergy strategy. Hopefully you've been enjoying that. And I want to let you know of an opportunity that is coming up really, really soon here at the School of Evolutionary Herbalism. In just a few weeks, we are going to be opening up free registration for our Herbal monograph map. This is a super in-depth 3-part workshop series where I'm going to be covering for you an outline, a framework, a pathway of study for how to learn medicinal plants strategically and effectively. You know, it's rare for people to take a step back and really think about what is the most strategic, efficient, effective way to learn medicinal plants, not just based off of what kinds of symptoms they're good for, but to really understand the plants at a fundamental level and in a way where that you don't have to memorize all this data and information about them, but where you understand them, where you learn them by heart. I'm going to be giving away my template for how to create incredible herbal monographs yourself, how to compile research, how to get all of your resources together and compile it together into a very in-depth and comprehensive herbal monograph. So be sure to join me coming up in a couple weeks in the Herbal monograph map. If you are not currently on our email list, head over to evolutionaryherbalism.com. Sign up there for our newsletter, The Plant Path. You'll get updates on all of our most recent publications to YouTube, the podcast, to our website, all the content that we're distributing, as well as opportunities for these more in-depth free workshop series. So be sure to mark the date on your calendar, a couple weeks. Join me in the Herbal monograph map. And with that, let's continue on with the Allergy Strategy Part 2. Now, another approach is stabilizing mast cells. Now, I talked about this in preventative approach, and I think that really is the better time to kind of approach this aspect, but you can do it acutely, and there are some things that can be helpful. I will just say that in order to do it, you've got to take a decent amount of these things in order for them to adequately help in an acute moment. And it's really flavonoids, right? This is basically flavonoids. There's a couple supplements that can be really useful. The two big ones that I like would be quercetin and a good vitamin C flavonoid complex. Note, vitamin C flavonoid complex, not just ascorbic acid. You really want to make sure you're getting the full, because vitamin C is not just one thing. It's actually kind of a whole complex of things. And so you want to get a nice, good vitamin C flavonoid complex, and then bromelain, which is an enzyme, can also be helpful. These 3 supplements can really be helpful at stabilizing mast cells. You generally want to be taking a decent amount of them in order for it to be effective. I think, obviously vitamin C can give you a little bit of a loose bowel situation, so be a little careful not to take too much vitamin C, but as much as you can take, the better. This is also something that you can do in preparation. If you're like, I'm gonna go outside today, or I gotta go mow the lawn today, like start loading up on those things before you go out as a preventative. And then if you start getting symptoms, you can take these things to help. There are some herbs that can be helpful also for stabilizing mast cells. So freeze-dried nettle leaf, that's what a lot of the research has been on for this property. This is usually a nettle extract in capsules that you would take. You have to take a lot of it. A lot of people are like, I tried freeze-dried nettles for hay fever. It didn't work. And it's like, well, how much did you take? Well, I took 2 capsules. And it's like, well, that's it? And they're like, yeah. It's like, no, that's definitely not going to cut it, right? If I was to administer freeze-dried nettle leaf for hay fever symptoms, I would probably have someone take 6 capsules every 20 minutes, 30 minutes until the symptoms start to subside. Like, that's a lot. But think how much nettle leaf can you fit in a little double-aught capsule? Not a ton. So that amount equates to, maybe a tablespoon or so worth of powdered herb, which is a decent dose, but that's what it takes. And frequency is key there. Hibiscus tea can be helpful. Hibiscus is also nice and sour, cooling, inflammation modulating, astringent, but it can help stabilize mast cells, very flavonoid rich, as can be, you could just tell by looking at the color of it. Plantain can help stabilize mast cells, as well as, and that's why plantain oftentimes is recommended for people that are having an acute allergic reaction. This is also probably one reason why a plantain poultice is so useful for stings and insect bites and things like that, that swell up. Danshen, that would be the Chinese red root sage, and reishi, Ganoderma lucidum. I'm not sure whether, like here in the Pacific Northwest, we have our Ganoderma organensis, which is commonly just referred to as a Oregon reishi. I don't know if it has the same mast cell stabilizing properties as the Chinese reishi. Just know from the research, the Ganoderma lucidum, the Chinese reishi, definitely has this property. So these are some things that you can do in an acute situation. These are the categories of herbs that you want to do, right? Astringe the mucosa, stimulate and disperse stagnation, drain dampness, stabilize mast cells. And those are some things that you can do if you find yourself in an acute moment of the itchy, watery eyes, sneezing, tingling sensations, the general discomfort that seasonal allergies can bring. So a little bit of a longer post here today, but I wanted to share that with you because I know this is something people struggle with here in the springtime, and wanted to share a little bit of my knowledge and understanding on this topic. And hopefully that serves you well. Hopefully you can get out there and experience the joys and wonders of the springtime in as much comfort as possible. So thanks so much for checking out this episode of The Plant Path. Once again, I went through a lot of remedies there, so I really encourage you to visit the full post on our website at evolutionaryherbalism.com. There's a link to the full post in the show notes and the description below. So check that out. Take some notes. Print off the article. There's a lot of really useful information there, and hopefully you can put it to use and take note of some of those remedies. I encourage you to go and study these remedies in more depth, understand what they do, whether they're appropriate. Don't just throw them all in a bottle and use that. Like, really learn the remedies. Like, take the opportunity, study each of those remedies, determine what's appropriate for whoever you would be giving them to, and go from there. So thanks so much for making it to the end. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It really does help support the channel so we can continue to disseminate good, free, quality, educational content to the herbal community. So once again, thanks very much. I appreciate it. Till the next one, take care and be well.